Maya Chen wiped down another table, her black uniform damp with sweat from running around the fancy Riverside Country Club all evening. 3 years she'd been doing this job, and still, most of the rich members looked right through her like she was a ghost. "Excuse me, miss," called out a woman dripping in diamonds. "This champagne is warm. Bring me a fresh glass immediately." Maya nodded politely and hurried to the bar. She was used to this treatment by now. To these people, she wasn't a person with dreams, feelings, or a story. She was just the help, someone to bring drinks, clear plates, and disappear until needed, again. What they didn't know was that Maya had something special hidden inside her. In her tiny apartment across town, a music degree hung on the wall, a master's in piano performance from the State University. She'd spent years studying, practicing until her fingers bled, dreaming of playing in concert halls. But dreams don't pay student loans or rent. Every day at work, Maya's eyes were drawn to the magnificent grand piano sitting in the club's main dining room. It was a Steinway, black and shining, worth more money than she'd see in 5 years of waitressing. The piano sat there like a sleeping giant, beautiful but silent. Members walked past it without a second glance, but Maya felt its pull every single day. During quiet moments when no one was watching, Maya would find herself standing near the piano. She'd imagine her fingers dancing across those perfect keys, bringing the instrument to life with music that could make people cry or laugh or feel something real. But she wasn't allowed to touch it. She wasn't even supposed to dust it. That job belonged to the maintenance crew. Tonight was different, though. Tonight was the annual charity gala for the Henderson Foundation, and the club was packed with the city's wealthiest people. Women floated around in gowns that cost more than Maya's yearly salary, while men in expensive suits discussed their latest business deals and vacation homes. Maya moved between the tables like a shadow, refilling wine, glasses, and collecting empty plates. She listened to their conversations about art collections, private jets, and which charity events they'd attend next month. Sometimes they talked about their children's piano lessons or music school auditions, not knowing that the woman serving their appetizers could play circles around their expensive teachers. "Did you hear about the Thompson's daughter?" one woman was saying as Maya approached with a tray. "She's been taking piano lessons for 3 years, and she still can't play a simple piece properly. We're paying that instructor $200 an hour." Maya bit her tongue and smiled as she placed fresh napkins on their table. $200 an hour. That was more than she made in a whole week. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, serving people who were paying fortunes for music lessons their children didn't even want, while her own musical gifts went completely unused. As the evening wore on, Maya noticed the club's manager, Mr. Williams, looking stressed. He kept checking his watch and talking in hushed tones with Mrs. Henderson, the foundation president. Maya had served Mrs. Henderson many times before. She was the kind of woman who spoke about charity and helping others, but treated the staff like they were invisible. "The pianist should have been here by now," Maya overheard Mr. Williams saying. "Mr. Davidson is never late. I hope nothing's wrong." Maya knew Mr. Davidson well. Not personally, of course, but she'd watched him perform at these events many times. He was a classically trained pianist who played at all the club's fancy parties. He was also the kind of person who looked down on the staff with obvious disgust, especially Maya. Once she'd accidentally bumped into him while carrying a heavy tray, and he'd complained to management about clumsy help getting in his way. The grand piano sat silent in the corner, waiting for Mr. Davidson's arrival. Maya glanced at it longingly as she passed by with another load of dirty dishes. The music stand was already set up with classical pieces. She could see Chopin, Mozart, and Rachmaninoff from where she stood. Her fingers tingled just thinking about playing those beautiful compositions. "Maya, table 12 needs more bread," called out Janet, another waitress who'd become her closest friend at work. Janet was the only person at the club who knew about Maya's musical background. Sometimes during their breaks, Maya would hum classical pieces, and Janet would say, "You should be up there playing instead of down here serving." But Maya knew better. This wasn't a world where waitresses became pianists. This was a world where you stayed in your lane, did your job, and didn't dream too big. She'd learned that lesson the hard way when she'd graduated with her music degree and discovered That talent alone wasn't enough to make it in the classical music world. You needed connections, money, and most importantly, you needed to come from the right background. As Maya continued her rounds, she couldn't help but notice how the guests treated her and the other staff. They spoke around them like they weren't even there, discussing personal matters and business deals as if the waiters were just furniture. Some guests were polite enough, but most barely acknowledged their existence beyond snapping fingers for service. The worst part wasn't the rudeness. Maya had thick skin by now. The worst part was watching all these wealthy people take for granted the very opportunities she'd dreamed of her whole life. They complained about their children's music lessons, talked about expensive instruments sitting unused in their homes, and discussed concert tickets to performances Maya would give anything to attend. Tonight, as Maya served her 100th glass of champagne, she found herself wondering what would happen if these people knew who she really was. What if they knew that the woman bringing them their dinner had performed solo recitals in college? What if they knew she could play pieces that would make them weep with beauty? But those were dangerous thoughts. Maya had learned to keep her dreams locked away during work hours. It was easier that way, safer. She couldn't afford to lose this job even if it slowly crushed her spirit every single day. The clock on the wall showed 8:30 and still no sign of Mr. Davidson. Maya noticed Mrs. Henderson looking increasingly agitated, checking her diamond-encrusted watch every few minutes. The program clearly stated that dinner music would begin at 8:15, followed by a special performance during dessert. Maya picked up another tray of dirty glasses and headed toward the kitchen, trying not to look at the silent piano. She'd gotten good at ignoring it over the years, at pretending it didn't call to her every single day. But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, the piano seemed to be waiting for something. Or someone. As she pushed through the kitchen doors, Maya heard Mrs. Henderson's voice rising above the dinner conversation. "This is completely unacceptable. Where is that pianist? Doesn't he understand the importance of this evening?" Maya set down her tray and took a deep breath. Just another night at the Riverside Country Club, she told herself. Just another evening of being invisible while surrounded by the one thing she loved most in the world. Tomorrow she'd wake up, put on her uniform, and do it all over again. But somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice whispered that tonight might be different. Tonight might be the night when everything changed. The dining room buzzed with conversation as Maya refilled water glasses at table 7. She could feel the tension in the air. Mr. Davidson was now 45 minutes late, and Mrs. Henderson's face was getting redder by the minute. "Perhaps we should start serving dessert," suggested Mr. Williams, the club manager, as he approached Mrs. Henderson's table. His usually perfect composure was cracking under the pressure. "Absolutely not," Mrs. Henderson snapped, her jewelry catching the chandelier light as she gestured dramatically. "The program clearly states that dinner music accompanies the meal, followed by a featured performance during dessert service. We cannot deviate from the schedule. Do you have any idea how much money our guests paid for this evening?" Maya tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't help overhearing the conversation. These charity galas were serious business at the Riverside Country Club. People paid thousands of dollars per plate, expecting a perfect evening of fine dining, entertainment, and social networking. Every detail mattered, especially to someone like Mrs. Henderson, who treated these events like military operations. Suddenly, the main doors burst open. Maya looked up to see 2 paramedics rushing in with a stretcher, followed by a very worried-looking woman in an elegant black dress. "Where is he?" the woman called out frantically. "Where's my husband?" Maya's heart sank as she realized who the woman must be, Mrs. Davidson, the pianist's wife. The paramedics quickly scanned the room before one of them approached Mr. Williams. "We're looking for Robert Davidson. We received a call that he collapsed at home about an hour ago. His wife said he was supposed to be performing here tonight." The dining room went completely silent. Every conversation stopped. Every fork paused halfway to every mouth. Maya felt her stomach drop as the reality of the situation hit her. "Oh my goodness," Mrs. Henderson gasped, her hand flying to her throat. "Is he?" "He's stable," the paramedic assured everyone. Looks like a panic attack brought on by stress, but we're taking him to the hospital for observation. He definitely won't be performing tonight." Mrs. Davidson looked around the room apologetically. "I'm so sorry. Robert has been working so hard lately, taking on extra performances to save money for our daughter's college. The doctor said he needs to rest for at least a week." Maya watched as the news sank in. 300 wealthy guests, a carefully planned evening, and now no entertainment. She could practically see Mrs. Henderson's blood pressure rising. "This is a disaster," Mrs. Henderson announced loudly enough for half the room to hear. "How are we supposed to continue the evening without music? People paid premium prices for this gala." Mr. Williams was already on his phone, frantically calling every pianist in the city. Maya could hear pieces of his conversations as she continued serving, though her hands were shaking slightly. "Hello, this is Williams from Riverside Country Club. We have an emergency." "What do you mean you're booked until November?" "Yes, I understand it's short notice, but..." One by one, every call ended in disappointment. It was Saturday night, and every professional musician in the city was either already performing somewhere else or couldn't make it to the club in time. The guests were starting to notice the problem. Maya overheard snippets of conversation as she moved between tables. "What's happening with the music?" "I specifically came tonight for the piano performance. This is exactly why I prefer the events at the Metropolitan Club." Mrs. Henderson stood up from her table, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice carrying across the entire dining room, "I'm afraid we're experiencing a small technical difficulty with tonight's entertainment." Maya cringed. Calling Mr. Davidson's medical emergency a technical difficulty seemed harsh, but she understood that Mrs. Henderson was trying to save face in front of all these important people. "Our featured pianist has been delayed," Mrs. Henderson continued, "but I assure you we're working on a solution. In the meantime, please enjoy your meals and we'll have music for you shortly." Maya could see right through the confident act. Mrs. Henderson was panicking, and everyone in the room knew it. The carefully planned evening was falling apart, and there was no backup plan. As Maya collected empty salad plates from table 15, she overheard two men discussing the situation. "This is embarrassing," one said, adjusting his expensive tie. "Henderson Foundation events used to be flawless. Maybe it's time to find a new charity to support." "Agreed," replied his companion. "If they can't even manage to book reliable entertainment, how can we trust them to manage our donations properly?" Maya's heart went out to Mrs. Henderson despite everything. She could see the woman frantically whispering with Mr. Williams and other club staff, trying to find any solution to save the evening. "What about the sound system?" Mrs. Henderson suggested desperately. "Can't we just play recorded music?" "The speakers aren't set up for background music," Mr. Williams explained. "They're only designed for announcements. Besides, your guests are expecting live classical performance, not a playlist from someone's phone." Maya noticed some guests checking their watches and phones. A few couples near the back were already putting on their coats, clearly preparing to leave early. This was a social disaster in the making. "Surely someone in this room can play piano," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice getting more desperate. "What about Dr. Peterson? Didn't his daughter study music?" Dr. Peterson, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, shook his head. "I'm afraid Linda only took lessons as a child. Nothing like what you need for an event like this." Maya continued working, but her mind was racing. She knew every piece on Mr. Davidson's music stand. She'd played most of them during her college recitals, and still practiced them at home on her small electric keyboard. But the thought of volunteering was terrifying. These people didn't see her as anything more than hired help. How could she possibly step forward and claim she could save their evening? They'd probably laugh at her, or worse, fire her for being presumptuous. But as Maya watched the evening continue to fall apart, she felt something stirring inside her chest. It wasn't just sympathy for Mrs. Henderson, though she did feel bad for the woman. It was something deeper, a yearning that had been buried for 3 years under black uniforms and polite smiles. The beautiful Steinway piano sat silent in the corner, its polished surface reflecting the chandelier light. Maya had walked past that piano thousands of times, always wondering what it would feel like to finally sit down and play it. Now, with Mr. Davidson in the hospital and no other musicians available, the piano waited empty and unused. "Perhaps we should consider canceling the remainder of the evening," Mr. Williams suggested quietly to Mrs. Henderson. "We could offer partial refunds." "Absolutely not," Mrs. Henderson hissed. "Do you know what that would do to the foundation's reputation?" "To my reputation? We need music and we need it now." Maya refilled another water glass, her hands trembling slightly. She could solve this problem. She knew she could. But stepping forward would mean risking everything. Her job, her safety, her carefully maintained invisibility. The dining room felt heavy with disappointment and growing frustration. Maya could see it in every face, hear it in every whispered conversation. The evening that was supposed to raise money for charity was turning into a social embarrassment that people would remember for all the wrong reasons. As Maya headed back toward the kitchen with another load of dishes, she passed close by the piano. Without thinking, she paused and looked at the music on the stand. Chopin's Ballad No. 1, one of her favorite pieces. She'd performed it for her senior recital and still played it every week at home. For just a moment, Maya let herself imagine what it would feel like to sit at that bench, to let her fingers find those familiar keys, to fill this room with the music it was desperately waiting to hear. But then reality crashed back in. She was just a waitress. These people would never accept help from someone like her. The risk was too great. The dream, too impossible. Maya shook her head and continued toward the kitchen, leaving the silent piano behind once again. Maya pushed through the kitchen doors, her mind still spinning from everything happening in the dining room. The kitchen staff were all talking about the pianist situation, their voices mixing with the clatter of dishes and the hum of industrial dishwashers. "Did you see Mrs. Henderson's face when asked Carlos, one of the line cooks? I've never seen her look so panicked." "Poor Mr. Davidson," added Linda, the head chef. "I hope he's okay. Stress can really get to you in this business." Maya set down her tray and leaned against the steel counter, trying to calm her racing heart. Through the kitchen service window, she could see Mrs. Henderson still making frantic phone calls while guests continued their dinner, the atmosphere growing more uncomfortable by the minute. "Maya, you okay?" Janet appeared beside her, carrying her own tray of empty plates. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just thinking about everything that's happening out there," Maya replied quietly. "This whole evening is falling apart." Janet glanced toward the dining room and sighed. "Yeah, it's pretty bad. Some people are already asking for their coats. Mrs. Henderson looks like she might cry." Maya had never seen Mrs. Henderson show any real emotion before. The woman was usually so controlled, so perfectly composed. But tonight, her carefully constructed image was cracking under the pressure. "I feel bad for her," Maya admitted. "I know she can be difficult, but she really cares about making these events perfect." "That's because her reputation depends on it," Janet said. "These charity galas are her whole world. If this one fails, people will talk about it for months." Maya picked up a clean towel and began wiping down her tray, though it didn't really need cleaning. She was just trying to keep her hands busy while her mind worked through an impossible idea. "Janet," she said slowly, "can I ask you something crazy?" "Shoot. Do you think, hypothetically, do you think any of those people out there would listen to someone like me if I had something important to offer?" Janet raised an eyebrow. "What kind of important thing?" Maya glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then lowered her voice. "What if I told you I could solve their music problem?" "What do you mean?" I could play piano for them. I could actually do it." Janet stared at her for a long moment. "Maya, I know you studied music, but this isn't a college recital. These people paid thousands of dollars for a professional performance. I am a professional," Maya said, more firmly than she'd spoken in years. "Or I was, anyway. I have the same degree as Mr. Davidson, the same training. I've performed pieces that are harder than anything on that music stand." Janet's expression shifted from skepticism to something like amazement. You're serious, aren't you? Dead serious. I could walk out there right now and play everything they were expecting to hear. Probably better than they've ever heard it before. Then, why haven't you said anything? Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I'm the help, Janet. These people don't want their waitress to suddenly become their entertainment. They want clear lines between who serves and who performs. But if you could really help them, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Would they even give me a chance, or would they just see it as some kind of joke? Before Janet could answer, Mr. Williams burst through the kitchen doors looking more frazzled than Maya had ever seen him. Has anyone seen Mrs. Henderson's phone charger? He asked frantically. Her battery died while she was trying to book emergency entertainment. We're completely out of options. Maya and Janet exchanged glances. This was it, the moment when Maya had to decide whether to stay invisible or step into the light. Mr. Williams, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up from digging through drawers. Yes, Maya, what is it? I'm kind of busy right now. Maya took a deep breath. I might be able to help with the music situation. Mr. Williams stopped what he was doing and really looked at her for the first time. What do you mean? I can play piano, classical music. I have a master's degree in piano performance. The kitchen went completely quiet. Even the dishwashers stopped what they were doing to listen. Mr. Williams stared at Maya like she'd just told him she could fly. I'm sorry, what did you just say? I said I can play piano, well enough to handle tonight's program. All the pieces Mr. Davidson was supposed to perform, I know them. Mr. Williams rubbed his forehead, clearly trying to process this information. Maya, I had no idea you had musical training. Most people don't. It's not exactly something that comes up during work. But you're saying you could actually perform for tonight's guests, like really perform? Maya nodded, though her hands were shaking. I know it sounds strange, but yes, I could do it. Mr. Williams looked toward the dining room, then back at Maya. She could see him weighing the impossible situation against an equally impossible solution. I don't know, he said finally. Mrs. Henderson has very specific expectations. These guests paid a lot of money. I understand the pressure, Maya said. But Mr. Williams, what other choice do you have? It's either me or canceled music entirely. Through the service window, they could all see Mrs. Henderson pacing near the piano, her face pale with stress. Several more guests were putting on their coats near the entrance. She's going to have a heart attack if this keeps up, Janet observed. Mr. Williams ran his hands through his hair. Maya, I believe you when you say you can play, but Mrs. Henderson, she's very particular about these things. I'm not sure how she'd react to having one of the waitstaff take over the entertainment. Then don't tell her I'm waitstaff, Maya said, the idea forming as she spoke. Tell her you found an available pianist, someone who can step in for Mr. Davidson. But you're wearing a uniform. Maya looked down at her black server's outfit, then back up at Mr. Williams. I can change. I have a black dress in my car that I wear to auditions. Give me 5 minutes, and I'll look like any other professional musician. The kitchen remained silent except for the hum of refrigerators and the distant sound of increasingly uncomfortable conversation from the dining room. Maya could see Mr. Williams struggling with the decision. What if it doesn't work? He asked. What if Mrs. Henderson figures out who you are? Then you fire me and we're back where we started, Maya said simply. But what if it does work? What if I can actually save this evening? Janet stepped forward. Mr. Williams, Maya's been studying music longer than she's been working here. If she says she can do this, maybe we should trust her. Mr. Williams looked out at the dining room again, where the situation was clearly getting worse by the minute. More guests were checking their phones, and the conversations were getting louder and more restless. The foundation could lose major donors over this, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Maya stepped closer. Mr. Williams, I'm not asking you to take a huge risk. Let me change clothes and warm up for 2 minutes on the piano. If you don't think I can handle it, I'll go back to serving tables and we'll pretend this conversation never happened. And if Mrs. Henderson finds out? She won't. Not unless you tell her. To everyone else, I'll just be the replacement pianist who showed up to save the evening. Mr. Williams was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the dining room where his boss was clearly falling apart. Finally, he looked back at Maya. You're absolutely sure you can do this? Because if you can't, it'll make everything 10 times worse. Maya thought about all the hours she'd spent practicing, all the recitals she'd performed, all the dreams she'd put aside to pay her bills. This wasn't about proving anything to these wealthy guests. This was about remembering who she really was underneath the uniform. I'm sure, she said, and for the first time in 3 years she actually meant it. Mr. Williams nodded slowly. Go get changed. You have exactly 10 minutes to prove you can save this evening. Maya's hands trembled as she fumbled with her car keys in the parking lot. Her black interview dress hung in the back seat, the same dress she'd worn to dozens of failed auditions over the past 3 years. She'd almost thrown it away last month, thinking she'd never need it again. Within minutes, she was back in the club's staff bathroom, transforming herself from invisible waitress to professional musician. She pulled her hair out of its practical ponytail and let it fall naturally around her shoulders. A touch of lipstick and some mascara from her purse completed the change. Looking in the mirror, Maya barely recognized herself. The woman staring back at her looked confident, elegant, ready to perform for an audience that had no idea who she really was. Maya slipped back into the kitchen through the staff entrance. Janet's eyes widened when she saw her. Oh my goodness, Maya. You look completely different. That's the point, Maya replied, smoothing down her dress. Where's Mr. Williams? He's in the dining room with Mrs. Henderson, preparing her for your arrival, Janet said. He told her that emergency replacement pianist had been located and would be here shortly. Maya's stomach flipped. What did she say? She looked like she might kiss him. The woman is desperate. Through the service window, Maya could see Mr. Williams approaching Mrs. Henderson's table. The dining room was noticeably quieter now, with many guests finishing their meals and looking around expectantly for some kind of resolution to the evening's problems. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Henderson's voice suddenly rang out across the room. Maya watched as the woman stood up, her composure finally returning. I'm pleased to announce that we've secured a replacement pianist for this evening. She'll be joining us momentarily to provide the musical entertainment you were promised. A murmur of relief swept through the room. Maya saw several guests who had been preparing to leave settle back into their seats. Now's your chance, Janet whispered. You need to walk in there like you belong. Maya took a deep breath and headed for the main entrance to the dining room. This was it, the moment that would either fulfill her deepest dreams or become her worst nightmare. She pushed open the doors and walked into the dining room with as much confidence as she could manage. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and Maya felt the full weight of their expectations. Mrs. Henderson approached her immediately, relief evident on her face. Thank goodness you're here. I'm Patricia Henderson, president of the Henderson Foundation. We're so grateful you could step in on such short notice. It's my pleasure, Maya replied, proud that her voice sounded steady. I understand you need classical pieces for dinner and a featured performance? Exactly. Nothing too modern, please. Our guests prefer traditional selections. Maya nodded and walked toward the piano, feeling like she was in a dream. The beautiful Steinway looked even more magnificent up close. She'd walked past this instrument thousands of times, but now she was actually going to play it. She sat down at the bench and adjusted the height slightly, her fingers finding their natural position on the keys. The room fell silent as guests waited to see what would happen. Maya began with something gentle, a soft arrangement of Debussy's Clair de Lune. The notes floated through the room like water, smooth and peaceful. She could feel the tension in the room beginning to ease as her music provided the elegant background the evening had been missing. As she played, Maya caught glimpses of the guests' faces. They looked surprised, pleasantly surprised. Whatever they'd been expecting from an emergency replacement pianist, it clearly wasn't this level of skill and sensitivity. Mrs. Henderson had returned to her table and Maya could see the woman visibly, relaxing for the first time all evening. Other guests resumed their conversations but kept their voices lower, respecting the music that now filled the space. Maya moved seamlessly from Debussy to a gentle Bach piece, then to some Chopin nocturnes. Her fingers remembered every note, every nuance. This was who she really was. Not a waitress serving drinks, but a musician, sharing something beautiful with the world. After about 20 minutes of background music, Mrs. Henderson approached. "The piano again?" "That was lovely," she said quietly. "Would you be ready for the featured performance now? Something more substantial for our dessert course?" Maya nodded and looked at the music Mr. Davidson had left on the stand. Chopin's Ballad No. 1, perfect. It was challenging enough to showcase serious skill, but beautiful enough to move an audience emotionally. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mrs. Henderson announced, "please welcome our pianist for tonight's featured performance." The room applauded politely as dessert was served. Maya waited for the servers to finish, including Janet, who gave her an encouraging smile, before beginning the most important performance of her life. She started the ballade slowly, letting each note ring clearly through the room. This piece was like telling a story. It had gentle moments and dramatic ones, quiet passages and powerful climaxes. Maya had performed it dozens of times, but never for an audience like this. As the music developed, Maya forgot about everything except the conversation between her fingers and the keys. She forgot about Mrs. Henderson, about the wealthy guests, about her fear of being discovered. There was only the music, flowing through her and out into the room like she was channeling something larger than herself. The ballad built to its dramatic middle section, where Maya's hands flew across the keyboard in passages that demanded both technical perfection and emotional depth. She could feel the audience's attention focusing completely on the music now. Conversations had stopped, entirely. When she reached the piece's gentle conclusion, Maya held the final notes until they faded into complete silence. For a moment, no one moved. The room was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Then the applause began. It started with one person, then spread quickly through the entire room until 300 people were clapping enthusiastically. Some guests stood up from their tables, showing the kind of appreciation usually reserved for concert halls. Maya looked out at the audience and felt tears welling up in her eyes. This was what she'd dreamed of for so many years, sharing her gift with people who could truly appreciate it. For the first time since starting work at the club, she felt like herself again. Mrs. Henderson appeared beside the piano, her face glowing with satisfaction and something that looked like genuine emotion. "That was extraordinary," she said, loud, enough for nearby tables to hear. "Absolutely extraordinary. I don't think we've ever had such a beautiful performance at one of our events." The compliments continued as guests approached the piano during the dessert course. Maya found herself in conversations about music, about training, about the pieces she'd performed. These were the same people who had looked through her for 3 years, but now they saw her as an equal, someone worth talking to, worth knowing. "Where did you study?" asked Dr. Peterson, the same man who'd earlier said his daughter couldn't help with the music. "State University," Maya replied honestly. "I have a master's in piano performance." "It shows," he said, nodding appreciatively. "That ballade was performed at the highest professional level. You should be very proud." Maya smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She was proud, prouder than she'd felt in years. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, many stopped by the piano to thank Maya personally. Several handed her business cards, mentioning upcoming events where they'd love to have her perform. "You saved our evening," Mrs. Henderson said, as the last guest departed. "I can't thank you enough. I hope we can book you for future events." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Mrs. Henderson had no idea that the woman who'd saved her evening was the same person who'd been serving her dinner for 3 years. As the dining room emptied, Maya sat alone at the piano for a moment, running her fingers over the keys one more time. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. After years of hiding her talent, she'd finally let it shine. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Tonight had changed something fundamental. Not just in how others saw her, but in how she saw herself. Maya sat in her car in the club parking lot for 20 minutes after the gala ended, still trying to process what had just happened. Her hands were shaking, not from nerves anymore, but from pure adrenaline and disbelief. She'd done it. She'd actually performed for 300 people and received a standing ovation. More importantly, she'd remembered who she really was underneath the waitress uniform. Her phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Girl, you were amazing. Everyone's talking about the mystery pianist. Mr. Williams wants to see you Monday morning. Good talk, not bad talk. Get some rest, you superstar." Maya smiled and started her car. She had a feeling Monday's conversation would be very interesting indeed. That weekend, Maya barely slept. She kept replaying the performance in her mind, remembering the feeling of her fingers flying across those beautiful keys, the moment when the entire room fell silent during the ballad, the genuine appreciation in people's voices when they thanked her afterward. On Sunday evening, her phone rang. The caller ID showed the Riverside Country Club. "Hello, Maya. This is Patricia Henderson. I hope you don't mind me calling. Mr. Williams gave me your number." Maya's heart stopped. Had Mrs. Henderson figured out who she really was? "I wanted to call personally to thank you again for Friday night," Mrs. Henderson continued. "Your performance was absolutely stunning. I've been thinking about it all weekend." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot. I have a proposition for you. The club has been looking for a resident pianist for our dining room, someone to provide music for our regular dinner service and special events. Would you be interested in discussing the position?" Maya almost dropped the phone. "You're offering me a job? A much better job than emergency fill-in work, I'd imagine. The position comes with an excellent salary, full benefits, and housing assistance if needed. We want to make sure we can keep talent like yours here at Riverside." Maya closed, her eyes hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Yes, I'd definitely be interested in discussing it." "Wonderful. Can you come in tomorrow morning to talk details with Mr. Williams and myself? Say 10 o'clock? I'll be there." Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly, but Maya felt like sunshine was following her everywhere. She dressed carefully in her interview outfit and arrived at the club 15 minutes early. Mr. Williams met her at the main entrance with a huge smile. "Maya, come in, come in. Mrs. Henderson is waiting in her office." As they walked through the club, Maya noticed staff members looking at her differently. Word had clearly gotten around about Friday night's performance. "Maya," called out Carlos from the kitchen doorway. "I heard you killed it the other night." "Way to go!" Mrs. Henderson's office was elegant and intimidating, with awards and photos covering the walls. The woman herself looked completely different from the panicked person Maya had seen Friday night, back to her usual composed, powerful self. "Maya, please sit down. I'll get straight to the point because I know your time is valuable. We want to offer you the position of resident pianist here at Riverside Country Club." She slid a folder across the desk. Maya opened it and nearly gasped at the salary figure. This is more than twice what I was making before," Maya said, staring at the numbers. "You'd be providing dinner music Thursday through Sunday, evenings, plus handling special events like our galas. The position also comes with health insurance, retirement contributions, and 2 weeks paid vacation." Maya looked up from the paperwork. "Mrs. Henderson, I have to ask. Do you know who I am?" Mrs. Henderson tilted her head. "You're a talented pianist who saved our foundation gala. Why?" Maya took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Because I've been working here for 3 years, as a waitress. I'm the one who served your table Friday night before I changed clothes and became your pianist." The office went completely silent. Mrs. Henderson stared at Maya for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that our emergency pianist was one of our own servers?" "Yes, ma'am." Mrs. Henderson leaned back in her chair, looking stunned. "Maya, I had no idea. 3 years, you said? 3 years of serving tables while trying to figure out how to use my music degree. And you never mentioned your musical background." Maya smiled sadly. Mrs. Henderson, when would that conversation have come up? People don't usually ask their waitress about advanced degrees while ordering appetizers. Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a moment, clearly processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than Maya had ever heard it. Maya, I owe you an apology. A big one. I've seen you hundreds of times over the past 3 years, and I never really saw you at all. I never thought to wonder who you were, beyond someone bringing me my dinner. It's okay, Mrs. Henderson, that's just how these things work. No, it's not okay. I pride myself on running an organization that values people, but I clearly wasn't valuing you. I was so focused on maintaining social boundaries that I never considered what talents might be hidden right in front of me. Maya felt a lump forming in her throat. This wasn't the conversation she'd expected to have. The job offer stands, Mrs. Henderson continued. In fact, I want to increase it. You'll be our head of musical programming, with input on all entertainment, decisions for club events. You'll also get priority booking for outside performances if you want to build a broader career. Maya stared at the revised offer. It was more money than she'd ever dreamed of making as a musician. There's one more thing, Mrs. Henderson said. I want you to know that Friday night changed something for me. Watching you perform, seeing the joy on your face when you played, it reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. You gave those guests something truly special, and you gave me a gift too. What kind of gift? You reminded me to pay attention, to really see people instead of just their roles. I've been thinking all weekend about how many other talented people I might be overlooking, simply because they don't fit my preconceived notions. Maya felt tears starting to form. Mrs. Henderson, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the job. Say you'll help us make music a real part of what we do here, not just background noise for rich people's dinners. Maya looked around the office, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 years of feeling invisible, of suppressing her dreams, of walking past that beautiful piano every day without being able to touch it. I accept, she said, and felt like she was accepting much more than just a job. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same dining room where her life had changed, but everything was different now. The evening's guests were listening to a young violinist she'd discovered working as a janitor at the music conservatory. Her job now included finding and showcasing hidden musical talent, wherever it might be hiding. Mrs. Henderson approached the piano where Maya was preparing for her own set. Another wonderful discovery, Mrs. Henderson said, nodding toward the violinist. How do you keep finding these people? Maya smiled. I look for the ones everyone else is looking past. They're always there. You just have to know how to see them. Like you were there all along. Exactly. As Maya began her evening performance, a job she still couldn't quite believe was real, she thought about the waitress she used to be. That person felt like a lifetime ago, but Maya was grateful for those 3 years. They'd taught her humility, resilience, and most importantly, they'd taught her that talent alone wasn't enough. Sometimes you needed courage, opportunity, and people willing to see beyond the surface. The music flowed from her fingers, filling the room with beauty and possibility. In the audience, she spotted several staff members she'd been working with to develop their own hidden talents. A server who wrote poetry, a line cook who painted, a security guard who had an incredible singing voice. Maya had learned that everyone had gifts worth discovering. Sometimes it just took the right moment, the right opportunity, and someone willing to take a chance on potential rather than just credentials. As she played, Maya caught Mrs. Henderson's eye and saw something there that hadn't been present 3 years ago. Genuine respect and friendship. The evening that started as a disaster had become the beginning of something beautiful, not just for Maya, but for everyone whose lives were touched by the music that followed. The last notes of her piece faded into appreciative applause, and Maya knew that this was just the beginning. There were so many more songs to play, so many more talents to discover, so many more people waiting for their moment to step out of the shadows and into the light. Sometimes all it took was one person, brave enough to sit down at the piano and remind the world what beautiful music sounds like when it comes from the heart.